Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Lucas, and I have Eric here as always.
Hey guys.
And today we'll be taking a look at the 2021 New York City mayoral election. This is an update video to a video that we did a couple of months ago now, and we just wanted to double check what happened and what we need to fill you guys in on. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So before we start with our updates, let's start with a little bit of background to the video, or to the race. We know we did a video on this before, but we're gonna briefly go through it again. So the current mayor of New York City is Bill de Blasio. He cannot run for re-election because he is term limited. He is a very, very unpopular mayor. I don't think he ran for president. He dropped out pretty quickly, but then he endorsed Bernie Sanders. So Bill de Blasio is more of a progressive mayor, but he is very disliked. So we could see people voting for another candidate because they don't really want a sequel to Bill de Blasio. So let's quickly go through the major candidates once again. So there's one big thing that has changed from last time, that being that Max Rose, the very centrist, moderate representative from Staten Island, he is no longer running for mayor. He initially filed an exploratory committee, but he has since announced that he is not going to be running for mayor. And honestly, I don't blame him because he would not have won the primary. He honestly is too moderate for the primary. He could have gotten votes in Staten Island, but really nowhere else because he has very, very moderate views. And New York City is a very, very progressive city. So the four major candidates that are running now in, I guess, order of importance, order of how the chance they have to win. Number one is Andrew Yang. He ran for president in 2020. He's a pretty strong base, the internet's favorite candidate. I believe, was a former CEO before, businessman, and his signature policy, universal basic income. He is the favorite to win right now. However, he has a very tough road ahead of him. And I guess tied for number two for winning the election is going to be between Scott Stringer, who is currently the New York City comptroller, which is essentially he's a person who does finance. It's almost like the secretary of the treasury. He used to be the Manhattan borough president, used to be New York State assemblyman. The other candidate that we're thinking that probably could win this one is Eric Adams, who was the Brooklyn borough, he is the Brooklyn borough president, was a former state senator. Both of them are polling pretty well right now. And the fourth person of the four major candidates is Sean Donovan, who worked under the Obama administration as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. We thought we'd throw him in here because he does have a chance of winning, although really not a good chance, because Yang, Eric Adams, and Scott Stringer, they're the ones that everyone's talking about. So let's head into endorsements here, and I'm going to pass it over to Eric now to talk about these endorsements.
So let's check out some of these endorsements. Let's start off with Eric Adams. So as you can see, with a lot of NY, Eric Adams has a lot of New York legislature endorsements. These endorsements really don't span outside of the New York Assembly, which is not necessarily a bad thing because once again, this isn't some sort of countrywide election. This is specific to New York, and you don't really need some guy from another state trying to endorse you. If you have some person who's worked with you in legislature of the state or even the local city, that may be a more meaningful endorsement. So as you can see, lots of council members and state senators endorsing Eric Adams, who is a bit more of a moderate candidate. Let's go on to Sean Donovan. So he has John Hickenlooper, who is from Colorado. Once again, as I said before, will John Hickenlooper being from Colorado really help Sean Donovan, who's trying to campaign in New York? Not sure. Not many people know who John Hickenlooper is, and he's not too notable, especially for people of New York City. But, that's probably the most important endorsement to take away from there. Let's move on to the next important candidate, who is Scott Stringer. So this one, as you can see, has the most endorsements. And I think this is the most, in my opinion, well-rounded number of endorsements because It has some from other places, but mostly it has a very good combination of New York state assemblies and U.S. representatives. For example, Jamal Bowman, who recently beat out one of the like senior congressmen. So that's a very notable endorsement. He also has Jerry Nadler, who is also a very notable congressman in the House. And he has a lot of other New York State Assemblymen and women and representatives. So he has quite the amount of people that really appreciate and really want him to win. And also Scott Stringer's reputation is pretty notable in New York because he dealt with a lot of finance and you know um he dealt with a lot of finance and economics in New York. So people really know him for that. And the last candidate we have here is Andrew Yang, and he has an interesting group of endorsements because this one is a very interesting combination of regular journalists to former Republican staff and a lot of other authors and activists. So I think the two most notable ones are Van Jones and Anthony Scaramucci, which two very different people. We're very surprised to see them under the same roof. But Van Jones is basically a journalist. He works for CNN now, and Anthony Scaramucci was actually Donald Trump's press secretary for like 11 days, and he's a Republican. Do Is a Republican endorsing a Democratic candidate going to help in New York City? Not necessarily, because in general, yes, seeing bipartisan or like cross-party endorsements may help. But once again, we have to remember New York City is a very, very, very Democratic area, and they really don't need any Republican endorsements. That actually may hurt them because, oh, we see a Republican endorsing this candidate. Is he not Democratic enough for my values as a New Yorker? And he has some other notable ones like Marianne Williamson. She ran for president and she's a current author. And he has a combinations of CEOs and activists. So very diverse group of endorsements from a lot of candidates.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, just one correction: Scaramucci was the communications director. But
Right.
seems
Patience.
that it seems that Andrew Yang, as you said, he has a lot more individuals. He has a lot less of those local politicians. He has some. He has Margaret Chin. He has Ron Kim, who came in the news recently with that thing with Cuomo. Richie Torres, also I guess pretty well known in New York City. So he really doesn't have that many of these local politicians, and a reason for that could be because obviously he hasn't worked with these people directly as a politician since he has just been on the national stage. While if you have someone like Scott Stringer, who has worked with these people before, he's been Manhattan Borough president. He is currently the comptroller right now. So it's no surprise that he has picked up a lot of these endorsements. So potentially these endorsements really could help him in the future, but we really got to wait and see. And as Eric said, who's really going to care about an endorsement from John Hickenlooper or from more federal officials? I feel like people in New York City they're going to care a lot more about who they know locally with the in New York City who their local politicians endorse rather than someone from another state or from the federal executive branch. Unless if you see like maybe Joe Biden makes an endorsement, which I'm not saying he will, he's probably not going to, but that could influence an election. And yeah, as Eric said, Eric Adams is more moderate. He has more moderate endorsements. Peter Koo is a pretty moderate council member. So heading into polling now, everyone's favorite topic. Looking at it right now, Andrew Yang is leading in basically every single poll that we've seen. You have the two RCV polls, which, if you don't know, New York City elects their mayor through ranked choice voting now, which essentially you rank your candidates by preference. And if no one hits 50% on the first round, everyone who the last place person, their votes get redistributed based on who they voted second, and the process keeps continuing until someone hits over 50%. So we see in both these, no surprise here, Andrew Yang is first, Eric Adams second, Scott Stringer is third, and then Sean Donovan. Oh, actually, interesting. Maya Wiley is actually coming in uh, coming in fourth. but honestly, I don't think she really has that great of a chance here. So it's interesting to see that even though Scott Stringer might have had the most endorsements, he still pulls behind Eric Adams, and we see that in the other polls as well. Data for Progress, we see Andrew Yang leading, of course, but we see Eric Adams second, and then Scott Stringer close behind in third. Head-to-head polls, yeah, we see Andrew Yang leading.
So two things to note here. One, if you really want to extrapolate something from polling data, you still have to wait a bit longer. Once again, polling has been a bit questionable recently. And, the election's happening in June, so we really have to wait and see. But basically, for context, because New York is such a Democratic city, when a candidate has won the Democratic primary, they're basically going to become the mayor, because there's no way a Republican is winning in New York City. Essentially, it's statistically almost impossible. And the second thing to note here is that polling data is polling data. So if you want to use it to your advantage, go ahead. But as I said, polling has been a bit questionable recently, and we're not too sure whether we can still rely on it.
Right, and I know some people might say, "Oh, Rudy Giuliani won," or Michael Bloomberg won. I think the difference is we've become a lot more divided as a country, and that includes New York City as well. That you're going to have it's swung a lot more to the left because people are becoming more and more solidified with their party instead of voting cross-party. That's why we kind of saw Bill de Blasio win in a landslide against Nicole Maliotakis, who now is a representative in, I believe, 2017. Yeah, 2017. All right. And then, last thing, debates. Honestly, nothing notable really happened out of it. Although we did see that a couple candidates did get attacked pretty, no, I don't want to say heavy, but they were targeted for sure. Andrew Yang was one, Scott Stringer, Eric Adams, and also Raymond McGuire. He, I believe, works for Citigroup. A lot of questions were raised about him, but again, he really has no chance of winning. Republican primary. I'm not surprised that the only person who's declared so far is Curtis Sliwa. I believe that's how you pronounce it, because really no one really has that good of a chance, and we're not going to pay attention to this at all. This is going to be more focused on who's going to win the primary in June. And that is the end of the video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please hit the like button. If you like our content, please hit subscribe. We'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.